Okay, then the iPhones. iPhone 13, 13 mini, 13 Pro, and 13 Pro Max. Pretty solid lineup. Very similar, again, to the 12, but I'm going to talk about some of the things that are more important. So, A15 Bionic chip in all of these phones. It's got a 5-core GPU in the Pro phones, 4-core GPU in the smaller phones, or the 13 and 13 mini. And then everything else is the same with the specs. A new 2 high-performance cores and 4 high-efficiency cores in the CPU. And it's still got ceramic shield, still got IP68 water resistance, still got the squared sides. It's got aluminum on the 13 and 13 mini, surgical grade stainless steel on the 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max.
Perfect.
What we did get changed is, first of all, the 64 gig model is finally retired, and it starts at 128 gigs of storage. That's something they could have done last year, but there we go. They've finally done it. The battery life is improved. It's 1.5 to 2.5 hours longer, depending on which model you get. I don't know exactly how that will translate to real world use because they keep saying like all day battery life.
Yeah,
it's all
we
day.
need to retire that phrase.
Well, Apple's used it forever. And
yeah, everyone uses it. It's not just Apple.
Yeah, it doesn't really mean anything substantial until we test the phone. But I like that they're quoting longer battery life and not shorter.
And the Mini needed it, for sure.
The Mini needed it. And these phones are actually slightly thicker and slightly heavier to support an actually larger battery capacity.
Okay.
Not substantially larger, but it's not smaller. So that's cool. The screens are brighter, 1,000 to 1,200 nits of peak HDR brightness, 1,000 nits or 800 nits for regular use on the 13 and 13 mini. I like having brighter screens. Obviously, it's the same resolution. But what's more important about these screens is the Pro phones now have ProMotion. They now have a variable refresh rate up to 120 hertz. That's something they should have done a year ago.
Yes.
But it's here. Okay.
I'd say biggest announcement of the
To me, this is the biggest new feature.
It was the one we were the most excited about, and it was funny because we talked about leaks before, and 120 hertz is something that leakers have claimed is going to happen for a while now, as far as I'm concerned, and I didn't see much speculation of it this year.
Yeah, there's been so many other phones to have 120 hertz for so long, we just kind of forgot about it and stopped thinking they would do it. But yeah, they've finally done it, and it's interesting because these are OLED phones and OLED screens, where the iPad Pro is still LCD, still a backlit screen. So that'll be interesting to see if it looks even better than the iPad Pro. But yeah, that'll be good to see. So this is where we're going to find out how much of a difference 120 hertz really matters. Because as much as I've said in the past, like, guys, you got to see 120 hertz in person. It looks so much better. I can't believe Apple's still selling a $1,000 phone at 60 hertz. And everyone always goes, well, nobody really cares and no one notices the difference to 120. This is where we're going to find out. There's going to be a 120 hertz iPhone in the store next to a 60 hertz iPhone. Will anybody see the difference?
I'm still interested on if, in that scenario, if someone would be on both of them and not see the difference, but choose to spend more money because of the difference.
Right. Well, they see the difference and then go, wow, so the more expensive one's $1,000 and the 60 hertz one's $800. Do I want to make that jump?
Yeah.
And I obviously would.
I think for the majority of people listening to this podcast right now, that's a jump they're willing to take. I personally would do it.
I recommend it.
But I do still, I mean, one person who says it all the time is John Morrison, TLD Today, and I don't disagree with his opinion on any of it. I don't think the majority of iPhone users care about the 120 hertz. The majority outside of our bubble that we live in, who are going to a carrier service or just getting a new iPhone. But now, like you said, now that they're going to have it,
will that change?
Will that change? Will they even really know what the difference is? Are just other phones going to feel slow, and then they'll learn about what it is, and it'll become more of a standard?
That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah,
I think one of my best litmus tests of like a new feature is if people in the real world like care or talk about it at all. And you're not going to see a lot of people talking about 120 hertz, but I think when you see the new Pro iPhones start to arrive in people's hands and people start to go, whoa, this feels way smoother.
That's what they're going to say. My phone feels so much faster than my last iPhone.
Way faster, way smoother, way more responsive. And when all these apps are going to take advantage of it, there's going to be 120 hertz games and 120 hertz web browsing and just scrolling around and going through things. And Apple, of course, has talked a big game about how they've optimized every little animation in iOS because that's what they do. They've had this, to be fair, they've had the smoothest 60 hertz phones out. I will give them that. And that actually gives me more confidence that the difference to 120 will be that much more well taken advantage of.
And they've done it on iPad also. So like this isn't their first rodeo on a mobile device like this.
So I think people are going to start to see the 120 hertz in person and go, whoa, that's a really big difference. Whereas if you just told people, hey, this phone has 120 hertz, do you want it? No one really knows what that means or cares.
Yeah.
And so I'm fully agreed with that. Like when you say regular people don't care about 120 hertz, I agree. It's because they don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So when you show it to them and they go, here's a new iPhone, it has it, and you show it to those people, I think that's where we're going to find out how many people really like it.
I agree. I don't know if paying $200 extra for it is going to be the initial jump into it for, again, the average, the non-techie.
Yeah, I would want to look at the numbers.
I think if two people saw it in a carrier service and were playing with them and that was the only difference they noticed, I don't think they'd be up for an extra $200. I think they'd pay $200 for a different color they wanted more before they would do it for a smoother experience.
I hate to agree, but I think that's probably true of a lot of people.
It's really hard to think outside of our mindset sometimes, but I would guess that that's probably...
Yeah. But I think a lot of people who are waiting for the iPhone to finally get 120 hertz,
they're amped.
It's here,
now.
finally.
Yeah.
So, like I said, $799 for the iPhone 13, $699, or actually, those are prices without carrier activation. So it's $699 or $729 for the 13 mini, and $799 or $829 for the 13. And then it's $1,000 or $1,029 for the 13 Pro, and then $1,099 or $1,129 for the 13 Pro Max. Also, there's a 1 terabyte version.
There is.
Just so you know, that's $1,599.
$1,599, yeah, for the Pro Max only, right?
Pro Max, Pro and Pro Max.
Pro and Pro Max. Okay,
yeah,
so the
spicy.
the 1 terabyte Pro Max is $1,599.
Yes,
that's the most
for the
expensive.
highest end. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the same as a Fold 3, right?
Pretty close. Fold 3 is about $1,800.
Oh, is it really? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
We also skipped over design-wise, the only real design change we saw, which was in the regular models, the 13 and 13 mini, which is since there's only 2 cameras on the camera bump, rather than have them vertical, they're now diagonal. I think it looks nice. I don't necessarily think it looks better or worse than the vertical.
I think it's a functional change too, because the sensors are so much bigger that actually makes space for them. And the primary sensor has now that larger sensor and that sensor shift stabilization. So remember the 12 Pro Max was the only one last year that had that new big sensor and sensor shift.
It has, right?
A lot of space. They're bringing that to all of the primary sensors on all the phones now. So that's a big deal. So they did have to move it diagonally, and it looks a little different, and they probably thought that would be nice for the new phone to have a different look. But that is a much bigger, better sensor. So they've moved that primary sensor, that bigger sensor, to all of the entire lineup, which is pretty sweet. And also there's now faster apertures across the range. I think it's f1.5 on the main aperture on the Pro. So now it's a bigger sensor and an f1.5 aperture, which is pretty sweet. But all around wider apertures on the Pro than the regular. And we'll probably also keep an eye on how that does in low light. And there's no like Astro mode or anything crazy. It's just probably going to be incremental improvements and better processing and less noise and things like that. But we'll see how that goes too. Hey, thanks for watching this clip, and be sure to stay tuned for more. Also, you should definitely subscribe if you want to see more of this stuff coming up, because there's a lot more. It's Techtember. That's how it is. There's you've brought the embargo box?
Yeah, it's getting pretty full.
Does everything fit in the embargo? Oh, barely fits in the embargo. You don't want to give it away though.
What if
can't show
you have to
stuff
subscribe
in there yet.
if you want to know what's in here.
Yeah, that's the point. That's the point. I'm glad you brought it though. Now people know.